Hey guys, Mike the Caveman Q here again, Paleo Problem Long Island and MikeTheCaveman.com. And today's question has to do with whether or not non-celiac gluten sensitivity actually exists. Okay, so this is a fun one. Now, gluten-free has become quite the go-to diet for a lot of people, right? It's a huge thing these days. Now, I like the concept. I'm very much anti-grains, anti-legumes, for the most part, particularly improperly prepared ones. That being said, some people just jumped on the gluten bandwagon. Celiac is a disease whereby people have an explicit reaction to the gliadin protein found in wheat. It is also found in barley and rye, but that being said, that gliadin then turns into gluten when it gets into the body. Now, that is majorly problematic for those with celiac. Okay? People who have that diagnosis can get reactions even from either cross-contamination or even inhalation. So if somebody who's working in a restaurant, then they have celiac, they can end up with major issues. But a different concept is what's called non-celiac gluten sensitivity. So it's a sensitivity to gluten, but you don't have a confirmed diagnosis of celiac. Now, there are a couple of problems with that. Well, first of all, in order to actually get diagnosed with celiac, the most common way to do that is they put you on a gluten challenge, whereby you consume cubic buttloads. And yes, that is an industry term. But you consume enormous amounts of gluten for 2 weeks in order to see if you develop the necessary anti-gliadin antibodies. Basically, your body mounts an immune response to it, and the doctors go and measure whether or not it's reached the certain threshold that you can be classified as having celiac. Now, do we see a problem of somebody who has celiac having to be exposed to gluten, and not just a little bit, a lot of gluten for 2 weeks? It's a major issue. So, me personally, I've never been diagnosed. I've never went through that challenge test. I simply saw that when I eliminated gluten and grains in general, but particularly the gluten-containing ones, that my health got better. I felt, looked, and performed better. So a lot of people are going through that same experience. Now, similar to my conclusions, we assume that we have, at the very least, a gluten sensitivity. Now, a couple of years ago, there was the big breakthrough study that non-celiac gluten sensitivity does not exist. And everybody was in an uproar. So everybody that saw gluten-free as a fad jumped on and said, nope, doesn't count, not real. People that actually have celiac, who thought that people were jumping on a fad, and they felt disrespected because people are making a joke of my actual condition, not considering that maybe other people don't have the diagnosis but don't feel great on it either. But what the study examined was how people reacted to high doses versus low doses versus no doses of gluten. Okay? These were concentrated sources of gluten added to the diet. And upon the end of the study, what they found was the majority, in fact 92%, did not have a gluten-specific reaction. But everyone did get worse once they got off of the induction diet. So, what was the induction diet? Well, it was a low FODMAP diet, okay? We talked about that before, but what are FODMAPs? Well, they are fermentable oligo, di, mono, saccharides, and polyols. Basically, they are fermentable carbohydrates that are not properly digested in your small intestine, make it to your colon, and they are digested by your gut bacteria. And if you are sensitive to FODMAPs, well, what do you think is going to happen? Your bacteria are going to have issues. And in a lot of these cases, most people exhibiting non-celiac gluten sensitivity are experiencing some type of gut dysbiosis. Same goes for IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. So a lot of times, what you may attribute to the gluten is actually happening due to FODMAPs and bacterial overgrowth. Now, let's be clear on something. Unless you're eating a lot of seitan, it's called seitan for a reason, which is a concentrated gluten protein, similar to a tofu with soy, only it's using gluten instead. But that's seitan. Unless you're eating that all the time, how often are you getting gluten in an isolated exposure? Generally speaking, you're eating it with wheat or barley or rye. You're eating it with a gluten-containing grain. So, when you're eating those, what else do you get? Well, wheat is a source of FODMAPs. There are fructans in that wheat. So, if you are eliminating grains, particularly the gluten-containing ones, you are going to be minimizing your FODMAPs. So perhaps, which is what the authors of that study came to the conclusion of, is that when people are eliminating those grains, particularly the gluten-containing ones, well, maybe they're seeing benefit from reducing their FODMAPs. So what are some other sources of FODMAPs? Fructans, like in wheat, but you'll also find that in onions, garlic, and inulin, which is a type of fiber. You'll find it in galactans, which you'll find in a lot of times in beans and soy and other legumes. You'll find them in polyols, which are sugar alcohols, which you'll find, xylitol, maltitol, sorbitol, erythritol, and a couple of fruits as well. You'll find it in lactose, so any dairy that contains lactose or any products that have lactose added to it, and fructose, whether it comes from high fructose corn syrup or even fruits or honey. So if you have an issue with FODMAPs, odds are you're going to want to avoid all those things, particularly short term. Now, that being said, let's just say it's not FODMAPs. What else could it be? Well, modern wheat. We've been growing it to become more pest resistant. And in the process, we have created strains of wheat that have higher levels of amylase-trypsin inhibitors. And those are also able to induce intestinal permeability and an innate immune response. What does that sound like? Well, the same thing you'd see in gluten sensitivity. One more thing is wheat germ gluten, which is a type of lectin that can act on your toll-like receptor 4 receptor sites, and they can induce an innate immune response as well. So there are at least 3 potential mechanisms: wheat germ gluten, amylase-trypsin inhibitors, and FODMAPs. So it's really easy to look at that study and point and say, oh, these people are just making up, it's all in their minds, it's psychosomatic, it's imaginary. But it may not be explicitly gluten. We may have pointed the finger at the wrong place, but it doesn't mean that by eliminating those grains, you're not still doing the right thing. You may not have celiac, but you still may have an issue with one of those 3. So if you focus on eliminating the potentially problematic foods, healing your gut, and improving your gut microflora, the population of the gut bacteria in your intestines, you're going to be on your way to a much better and healthier life. So next time someone tries to tell you that, oh, you don't have celiac, so obviously you can eat this, or don't worry about it, it'll be okay with cross-contamination if you're at a restaurant or something. No, doesn't matter. They're wrong, okay? There are a lot of other issues with wheat in particular and grains in general. Just because you don't have a piece of paper that lets you be a card-carrying member of the Celiac Club doesn't mean that it's necessarily good for you. Alright guys, hopefully you liked the video, helped you out a little bit. If you have any more questions, you know what to do. But in the meantime, like and subscribe down below. Make sure you share it with your friends. And head on over to Instagram and Twitter and follow me at Mike the Caveman. Head on over to Facebook and like Paleo Primal Long Island. And of course over on MikeTheCaveman.com. That being said, guys, I'll see you next time. And this week has been amazing. Enjoy this beautiful weather. Get your vitamin D. I'll see you later, guys.